Greetings, this is Amy Wentley with Chai Knuckles Knitting, and this is episode 2021-24, Ebbie Sweater, Finishing Side Seams. So this is the third in a series of videos about the Ebbie Sweater and finishing it. The first one was about joining the left and right neck bands. The second one was joining the neck band to the back of the sweater. This one is going to talk about how to seam the side seams on the sweater. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to pin together, if you haven't already done so, your side seams and your sleeve seams. Now it's easier to start with the sleeve seams because the pattern on the sleeves is this banded pattern. And you want the one side of the sleeve and the other side of the sleeve to match up along these bands. So, and you also are going to be pinning these right sides or wrong sides together so that you can see the right sides. We're going to be doing the seaming looking at the right sides of the project. So go ahead and pin these together, and I have a pin at the start, and then I have a pin at every other one of these bands. What happens though is when you get to the underarm, these bands all match up all the way down. When you get to the underarm, you start to right about here where this orange marker is. See that? Right about here is where you change from doing a seam where these bands join up to joining an edge to the edge of the side seam. And this is actually, because of the way this sweater is constructed, this is actually the top of a piece of fabric, and this is the top of a piece of fabric that are being joined together. So then when you get to the point where you're going to be seaming these two top pieces together, and this is going to be from this orange marker that's on that last band of the sleeve, that's a horizontal seam, you're going to be working from there and to the, it's actually, you're going to work from the cast on to there, but you're going to need to pin these together. And you're going to have to try to do it equally so that the stitch counts match up, so that if you're essentially at stitch 10 here, you're at stitch 10 here, 20 here, 20 here, 30 here, 30 here, like that, and line them up in that way. Okay, that's how we're going to work. So you probably don't want to cut a piece of yarn 3 times this length to work with, because that's just too much to work with. So what I'm going to do today is I will show you what to do when you run out of yarn as you're going up this seam. But we're going to start this, and go ahead and thread yarn on your needle. I guess it's about a little bit, maybe 1.5 times the length of this sleeve. That should be pretty good, or this seam. That should be pretty good to work with. Now I'm going to get closer here, and I am going to be working with the sweater oriented this way. So I'm going to have one side piece on the top and one side piece on the bottom here. This is actually my front join here, okay, or my front placket, you know, where the fronts come together. And this is the side seam, and I'm going to have them oriented this way to work it. I'm going to bring the camera in closer now so you can see what I'm doing. See if I can get this all on camera. Okay, I think I can. And let's try to get this fabric underneath out of the way so you're not confused. Go away. Okay, here we go. So one thing you'll see here is I have what is a cast on end here and a bind off edge here. We are not going to be working those stitches. you're actually going to be going up on this row above the cast on, those stitches there, and you're going to be joining them to the row below the bind off here. We're going to start with a figure 8 knot, which is the way we start a lot of our seams. So you can take your first marker out here. Sorry, I'm off camera a little bit here. I'll line it up in a second. Okay. So you're going to start with the top piece, and you're going to bring your needle from underneath and up, and you're going to leave a tail. Then you're going to come to your bottom piece and do the same thing. Come up from the edge of the bind off here and pull up. And there's your tail. And then you're going to go back to the first piece, come up from the bottom in exactly the same place and pull up, and that makes your figure 8 knot. See the 8? There you go. And you're going to pull that. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to start by going into the under both legs of this stitch. There's one stitch here. Do you see that V? We're going to come up between those two legs, so in the middle of that V on the bottom, and pull through. And then we're going to go up to this other side, and we're actually going to go under the two legs of the stitch here. So if you look closely, well, it's kind of hard to see, but this is a stitch, and this is the V, and these are the two legs, and we're going to go under the two legs there. So on the bottom part, we are going to now come down to the bottom part again, and we're going to go into the middle of that V that we came up from last time. And we're going to go into that middle of that V, and we're going to come up into the middle of the next V. So you see this next V here. We're going to come up to the middle, through the middle of that V. And you can leave this yarn loose. We'll pull it tight later. I'm going to come up, and I'm going to go to this last part, and I'm going to go back down into the stitch I came up from here. So this is where I came up from, and I'm going to go back into that same hole, and I'm going to go under the two legs of the V on the top piece and pull through. And then when I come back down to the bottom, I am going to go into the middle of the V that I came out of before, and I'm going to go under and come up the middle of the next V and pull through. Then I'm going to come up to the top again, and I'm going to come into where I came out before. I'm going to go under the two legs of the V above that cast on there. Then I come down to the bottom piece, and I'm going to come in the same place I came out before, which was in the middle of the V, and I'm going to come under, and I'm going to come up the middle of the next V. There it is, the middle of the next V. So on the bottom piece, I'm working in the middle of the V's, and on the top piece, I am working under the two legs of the V. So I'm going to come up here to the top piece, I'm going to come into where I came out before and go under the two legs of that V. And then I will come down to the bottom piece and come into the middle of the V, and I will come up through the middle of the next V. And I'll come up to the top, and I will come in where I came out before and come under the two legs of the V. And I continue doing this. Now, I've gotten about this far. I think I've done about 5 stitches. I think that's a good rule of thumb. I'm going to hold the knot that I made, and I'm going to hold my working yarn. And I'm using dapple, so I'm going to want to twist my yarn, add some twist there, make it a little stronger. And I want to pull firmly but not sharply, because I don't want that yarn to split. And I'm going to pull until that seam becomes tight. There you go. And that's what your seam looks like so far. It's pretty much an invisible seam. This is your ribbing right here. Okay. I'm going to do this a little bit more for you, just so you can follow along. And then I'll pause for just a little bit, but I will then show you how to join a new piece of yarn if you run out. So it gets a little funny when you pull the yarn tight because you can forget where you were. But if you just loosen it a little bit, I can see that I just came under these two legs and came out here. So that's where my yarn is going. And I came from the middle of this V. So I'm going to come down the middle of that V, come up the next V, and pull my yarn through. And then on the top, I come back where I came up, go under the two legs of that V, and then I'm going to come down to the bottom piece and come into the V that I came out of last time and up through the middle of the next V. And I will continue working this way all the way until I run out of yarn, or until I get to the orange marker that I had up further that way. At the armpit. So I am going to pause the recording right now, and I will be back when I'm about to run out of yarn, and I will show you how to add a new piece. Hi, I'm back. I'm going to go ahead and give you a couple more tips, and then we'll talk about how to change the yarn in the middle of the seam if you need to. So I'm going to continue doing my seam. I'm working on a seam here, and I'm going to come up and go under the two legs on the top piece, and then through the two V's on the bottom piece, and under two legs on the top piece, sorry, I was a little off camera there. We'll get you back on track here. And a little, and between the two V's on the bottom piece, under two V's on the top piece. And I'm doing about 5 a piece. I think if you are using dapple to seam, that you're going to, that's 3, that you're going to want to limit it to about 5 stitches before you pull. Because dapple is, we talked about it being softly spun, and so we want to keep the amount of yarn that we're pulling, that we're actually tugging on, short. So this is 5 for me. And my yarn is getting kind of small right now, so I might want to be thinking about not getting too short on your sewing yarn. It's better to stop it too long than too short. So if you are using dapple, you'll want to hold the bottom of your stitches, and you want to twist the yarn in the direction that it's spun to make it tighter spun. And you're going to go ahead and pull, and just pull a bit, and then inch up on the yarn and twist, and pull a little more, and inch up on the yarn and twist, and pull a little more, and then keep doing that until you feel like you've pulled that seam pretty tight. Now back here I can see there's one stitch that hasn't been pulled tight. I'm a little hesitant to go ahead and pull that tighter. So I'm just going to use a pin or a knitting needle. Surely there must be a knitting needle nearby. Give me 1 second and I will find something for you. I will pause and be right back. Okay, I found a needle and I let the cat in, so 2 good things I accomplished. So if you need to go back, you can pull on these stitches to help tug them through. I'm going to twist again here and pull. There you go, and that came through. If you want to, after every 5 stitches too, you might want to tug a little bit, you might want to pull a little bit, you might want to just make sure that that seam isn't too tight, so you can manipulate it a little bit. Don't be afraid to do that, okay? So I finished up this last stitch by coming up a V, okay? So if I want to change yarn, I'll go ahead and I'll get another piece of yarn ready. That's what I'm doing right here. Hold on. Okay, so I got a new piece of yarn ready. It's right here. I'm going to set it aside for right now. So I just came up. Now I'm not going to want a tail hanging out in the front of my work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to the top as if I was going to go under the 2 stitches, under the 2 legs. But I'm going to go under the 1 leg, but I'm going to not come up the other leg. I'm just going to pull my yarn through and let the tail hang on the old piece of yarn. And I'm going to stuff that back there so that I don't have to worry about it getting in the way. I'm going to thread my new yarn and I'm going to come up on the other side of that leg. So if you imagine that I would have come under this leg and then under the left leg, that's how I would have done it. But this time I came under the right leg and I put my needle through and let my end drop there. So I want to come up with the new piece of yarn on the other side of that leg. So on the other side of this leg, I want to come up. Come on. Okay, on the other side of that leg. And I'm going to leave a hole that I'm going to let fall behind in the back of my work. Then I'm just going to continue what I have been doing. And boy, that stitch marker's in the way, so I'm going to get that out of the way. So I'm going to come down now into the middle of the V that I came up from before and come up the next V. And I'm going to now come up to the top again and come under the 2 legs of the next stitch. This leg and this leg. And I will just continue doing what I had been doing before, coming through the V and up through the next V, going under the leg, up here, and up the next leg, so under those 2 legs. And then right this first time I won't do the 5 stitches because I've got these yarns hanging in the back here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to reach through and I'm going to grab those yarns hanging in the back. There's 1, 2. There you go. Let me see. I got to find them. Maybe it'll be easier to come this way. Find those 2 pieces of yarn. Here they are hanging in the back. I'm going to go ahead and hold those in my hand. And actually lifting under would be good. Hold them under, hold them underneath the piece, and then pull your active yarn right now to make that tight, just to make sure everything's good. Okay? So I'm pulling under here, where my two tails are, and I'm pulling the top yarn just to make those straight. And I'm going to continue now, and I should be fine. When I come and I finish this seam, I'm going to want to come back, find these two pieces of yarn here, and I'll weave them in to the back, and I will be fine. So that's how to do the side seam. And when you finish and you get all the way to this orange marker I have here at the armpit, this is where the sleeve bands end. I will go ahead and make a knot there, and we'll be done with this side seam. We'll be working the sleeve seam from the other end of the sleeve, and everything is going to meet at the underarm, because underarms hide all evils. So we'll have all our strands and everything all at the underarm where nobody will be able to see them. I'm just going to pause for a minute. I'm going to finish this sleeve, and I'll show you how to end. I'm coming up on the orange marker where the armpit is on this, and this is where we'll end this side seam. I wanted to point something out to you as we're getting towards here. So I have been telling you to come up from the middle of the stitch on the bottom, the middle of the V, and then come under two legs to the top, and then come under the middle of the V and come up under in the middle of the next V, and then to come up and come under the two legs on the top. So if you'll look at my yarn here, you can see that what I'm really doing is making another knit stitch between the stitches in this row and the stitches in this row. See how that's a knit stitch there, joining the two? So there's one coming under the V and through the two legs, and I'm coming back under the V, and I'm going to come up through the next V, and I'm going to come under the two legs of the next stitch. So you do see how I'm creating this row of new V's actually by doing this through the middle of the V on the bottom and under the legs on the top. So there you go. It's like a whole new row of knitting between those two. And that's how that's helping to make us have a more invisible seam at this point, or at all points of this seam. So I'm coming up now to the orange marker, and this is at my underarm. So I'm going to go ahead at this point. I'm going to pull my stitches tight. Excuse me while I do that. So I'm twisting my yarn again to make it strong and pulling, twisting and pulling. And there you go. So when I get to the end here, what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to take my yarn. I'm at the bottom where I'm coming up through the middles of the V's. I'm going to come down to that top part, and I'm going to reach underneath, and I am going to, let me back up a little bit so you can see a little bit more. I'm going to reach underneath, and I'm going to pull the needle through to the inside of my jacket now. And I'm going to go ahead and open that up, and you'll be able to see even more in a second. There you go. Let me open that up, and this is what your seam looks like on the inside. Pretty nice, huh? And so here I am at my orange marker at the armpit, and I'm just going to do like a whip stitch here, like we ended the whip stitch seam in the last video. And I'm going to make a loop. I'm going to pull my yarn through that loop and make a knot there. I'm going to cut my yarn, and I am going to weave in that end later. And if you'll see down here too, there's two places where I actually added more yarn. So with these two here, we'll just go ahead at the end, when we weave in the ends, we'll cross those and weave them into, I would actually weave them into the seam to hide them, those ends. So cross them and then weave them into the seam. So that is the side seam for the Ebbie sweater. The next seam we're going to do is going to be for the sleeves. So please come back for that video. Thank you. Bye-bye.